In this video, we will look at 6 questions from Paper 1, Part B2. First, Part B2, Question 49. This is a short response question that requires you to understand a reference in the text. Let's start by looking at the question. It asks you to identify what the phrase, "the loss that this technology tries to amend," refers to. The rubric also tells you that this phrase can be found in line 9. So let's start by looking at a part of a text where the phrase appears. To work out the answer, we first need to identify what this technology refers to. In line 8, we find the phrase "a small computer or tablet that plays aloud words" typed into it. And the first line of the paragraph explains that this type of device is an example of adaptive alternative communication. Note, however, that the question does not ask what this technology refers to, but what the loss refers to. So let's look at paragraph 1, where adaptive alternative communication is first introduced. This paragraph explains that adaptive alternative communication is intended for people whose power of speech has failed. In other words, these people have lost the power of speech. So the answer is the loss of the power of speech. You can choose to answer in your own words as long as you express this idea. Let's move on to question 54. Like question 49, this is a short response question which asks you to identify a reference made in a text. But instead of a phrase, you need to identify what the pronoun "this," which can be found in line 25, refers to. In line 25, we can see that this refers to some kind of problem. As this is the very first line in paragraph 5, we need to look at the preceding paragraphs to work out what this problem is. The last line of paragraph 4 is a quote from Patel, where she says that people who don't have a voice are being dehumanized. This is a possible answer, but more likely, this refers to a bigger problem. The main idea of paragraphs 3 and 4 is that people with voice disorders have to use the same voice. There are a lot of mentions of this problem in these paragraphs, as shown here. The best answer, then, is that this refers to the fact that people with voice disorders are using the same voice. You can answer in different ways, as long as you express this idea. Next, let's look at question 57. This is an extended response question, which requires you to use your own knowledge and think beyond the text. The question asks you to think about the reason why Focal ID call their custom-made voices bespoke voices. Note that this question starts with "why do you think?" This suggests that the answer will not appear in the text. You will have to think beyond the text to answer this question. Of course, we know that spoke is a past tense of speak. This is clearly one reason why they chose this name. But does the word bespoke have another meaning? Bespoke is an adjective that means made specially according to the needs of an individual customer. In other words, it is a synonym of custom-made, which is exactly what the voices are. So the reason why Focal ID call their custom-made voices bespoke voices is that the word bespoke means custom-made or customized, or that spoke is a past tense of speak. Let's move on to question 58. Like question 57, this is an extended response, higher order thinking question. In other words, to answer it, you will have to think beyond the text. The question asks you to explain why the writer uses the term imagined voice quality in line 34. Let's look at line 34 for context. The The writer explains that vocal ID's clients use a voice that is the closest approximation to their imagined voice quality. So we know that their imagined voice quality refers to people who have lost the power of speech, but we cannot find the answer to the question in the text. So first, think about what imagined means. If something is imagined, you only have an idea about it in your mind. Why might these people only have an idea about their voice quality in their mind? Well, it's possible that they have never had a voice at all, or they might have lost their voice a long time ago, and therefore forgotten what it really sounded like. You will have to use your own words to answer this question. You can do this in different ways as long as you express one of these ideas. Next, question 63. This is a short response vocabulary question. It asks you to find a word or phrase in paragraph 9 that can be replaced by completing. So let's look at paragraph 9. Remember that completing must be able to replace the word or phrase. Therefore, you should start by looking for a verb ending in ing. There are several in paragraph 9. Using, trying, and speaking have completely different meanings from completing. Building and constructing have slightly similar meanings to completing, but they are not synonyms. So let's look more closely at putting. This word is actually part of a longer phrase, putting the finishing touches on. Put the finishing touches on something is an idiomatic expression that means add the final details that make your work complete. In other words, it has a very similar meaning to completing. Let's try replacing this phrase with completing. Completing Sarah's bespoke voice is grammatically correct, and it also makes sense. This must be the correct answer. Note that you need to include the preposition on in your answer. Again, completing must be able to replace the phrase. We cannot say completing on Sarah's bespoke voice. Finally, let's look at question 68. This is a multiple choice question, which tests your ability to make inferences. That is, to read between the lines of a text. The question asks you to infer what the word anticlimactic suggests about people's expectations for their customized voice. To answer the question, you need to choose the option that best completes the phrase, they believe it will be. So let's look at paragraph 14, where the word anticlimactic appears. The text explains that the moment when a person's voice is turned on can be anticlimactic because they are not quite sure how to respond to it. It then adds that things get better in the days and weeks after. In other words, there is no immediate positive reaction. Instead, it comes later. From this, you can infer that if something is anticlimactic, it is disappointing in some way. Now, let's look at the options in the question. Based on the information in the text, option C, an immediate improvement, seems to be the best answer. Because if you believe something will be an immediate improvement, it will be anticlimactic or disappointing if the improvement doesn't come right away. But let's look at the other options first. Do these people believe their customized voice will be a letdown? A letdown is something that is disappointing because it's not as good as you expected it to be. This cannot be the correct answer. If people already believe their voice will be a letdown, then getting the voice cannot be anticlimactic. Let's now turn to option B. Do people believe their voice will be more responsive? The text says that people don't know how to respond to the voice, but there is no mention of the voice being responsive, because this doesn't really make sense. As for option D, do people believe the voice will be something they need to internalize? The text says they do internalize the voice, but there is no indication that this is their expectation. The only possible answer then is option C. They believe it will be an immediate improvement.